I record? Does it pop up? Check. Is it? We're live? Nelly. Oh, God. Well, first of all, she's way over there. Papa, can you come here so the people can see you? Papa, come here so the people can see you. Come here. Here we go. Here's the people. You're real. They're gonna be so excited that you're a real hug, and they weren't sure. I feel like I am a very fluffy haired Joe Rogan, and and this guy is my Alex Jones.
No,
He's just a squishy face, loud breathing,
majority is Nelly.
not informed at all person. Well, here we go. We'll go live. You said you were going to be a hype man, and now you're like leading the cause. So here we go. Hey, we're back, and it's no better than when we left off. Welcome back. Grab a glass. This is part 2, and it's influenced by this sweet little company I found called Round Rock Vodka. It's 6 times distilled, gluten-free, which is so important, and handcrafted out of Texas, which is awesome and very, very fitting because Joe exiled to Texas and he will never be allowed back in California because we don't want to deal with that. But on a serious note, to go back on episode 1, which this has like been a month since I recorded that. And so we've learned so much and grown so much and matured correctly as people and individuals and spiritual beings. I have to give credit and go back because some of this ended on a climate part of the podcast. And one of my biggest influences, one of my biggest motivators, Rob Wolf, has recently written an amazing book called The Sacred Cow: The Case for Better Meat, by why well-raised meat is good for you and good for the planet, which I think is also being made into a documentary or a docu-series, and I could totally just be wishing on that. But that book actually has a substantial amount of information and research as far as that's going to get me in trouble. I apologize for the very loud pug. She's ruined all of our Zoom meetings.
She's very tired.
In 2020, it's very exhausting. But Rob Wolf has written this book and co-authored this book and has some amazing, smart people in it. And they also help to unpack this whole carbon, sustainable earth, sustainable agriculture, dilemma, confusion, hypotheses that is going on in the past, 5 years in particular, but probably going to lead for the next 5 years as well. But I mean, he amazingly breaks it down, and it's very hard to you don't want to argue it, first of all, because it's so smart, but you don't want to, you could fully understand the points that are being made. They're accurate. You could research them. You could find out what he's talking about, where he's talking about it, and how that stuff actually works. So that is a great resource. And since you got to do something about her, man, I know. But since then as well, I also stumbled onto an amazing, highly informative sorts, incredibly smart. The guy has done all types of breakdowns, which has been fantastic. This guy named Dr. Todd Grande, he has his own YouTube channel. You can look it up. He breaks down, the OJ case, Stephen Avery, Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm going to bring him up later as a reference for this Jeffrey Epstein stuff. But like I said, he is fascinating. He's highly, incredibly entertaining, and has these zingers and one-liners that come out of nowhere, but are so worth it to watch his videos and his breakdowns. He's not doing an actual medical, psychological breakdown of these people or of these situations. but he's kind of throwing his 2 cents as a very well educated source. And if you watch them, even if you know these stories, if you watch these documentaries on Netflix, whatever, they're very highly entertaining, very fun to listen to him break this stuff down. The reason I bring him up is because he actually broke down the Joe Rogan Alex Jones podcast, which is my part 1, which is also this part 2. And he and I literally hit the same points. It was so reassuring to see that, as somebody who definitely is an intellectual, definitely is smart, definitely has a background in this stuff, and then he and I are kind of making the same conclusions, arriving at the same points, having similar breakdowns. Again, I was pleasantly shocked and surprised that he and I were saying similar things and arriving at the same conclusions and making similar points. So definitely check out his channel. It's awesome. I've stopped watching Netflix. I've started watching him because you just got to pay attention, because he's going to throw in some, he wouldn't think he's a comedian, but he has some amazing points that are fantastic to bring up. So when part 1 ended, and I've tried to look back at this, and again, it's a whole year later, it's a whole month later. It feels like a year in 2020. In the quarantine, it's been 7 years and 6 days. But it ended on a very bad place where Jones was so much out of his element, talking about climate change, needing to have proof. Joe Rogan was like, where's your sources? Where's your sites? Where's this? Where's that? And he didn't have that. It became this entire global conspiracy of climate change and Democrats and power control, and you probably say Illuminati. You could probably say that there was a nefarious sources and not Owl Tree or Owl Farm. That's Hunter S. Thompson, but Bohemian Grove started to go that realm. And this is again like only an hour in when I did part 1, and I cut it because it was getting too extreme. But going into some of this stuff, when it picks up, pretty much at the hour 20 mark on the Joe Rogan podcast episode with Alex Jones, this complex theory of CIA child trafficking and this thing called the Finders. And you watched the documentary with me, which is called Where's Johnny? Or Finding Johnny. I have it right here. Sorry. It is Who Took Johnny. That is the documentary. You can look that up. That's the original milk carton kid that gets popped up. Yeah. We watched a documentary on that, and that intersects and intertwines with this thing, which seems to be that Jones in particular has based most of his child sex crime, trafficking, nefarious acts, deep state theories on, which is literally like one person detective, one resource, and hearsay of 2 individuals in a case that is pretty well known and has I'm glad you agree, has completely been dissected and pulled apart, and nothing since it's happened has been able to be put back together and found to be true, which is very insane. So again, it's a CIA 120 mark on the podcast of Joe's podcast, a CIA child trafficking plot story, and this thing called the Finders. The Finders were believed to be a child sadist sex ring. The investigation was kicked off when 2 members, quote unquote, were accused of child abuse in Tallahassee, Florida. All this stuff is online, and it's been online since like literally the day that it's happened. The internet formed. It's like these 2 stories and the internet just gelled together. And it is definitely well discussed, well talked about, but there are very limited conclusions at the end of this. The men that were arrested, the 2 members, spent 6 weeks in jail before a judge completely dismissed the charges. So that already sounds like it didn't work out well. In the conspiracy theory-torial realm, it sounds like, oh, well, there's higher players at play that are clearly being able to manipulate the situation and take it apart. But literally, that never is able to create a basis or information from there. The complaint back then was a misdemeanor child abuse charge resulting from a complaint that 6 children, this is like the whole quote unquote, were playing in a park who were unkept and neglected. 2 of the subjects that were with the children, 2 people arrested, could not initially provide sufficient information as to their legal custody of the children's identity, and as a result of the information developed during the arrest of the FBI in DC, was contacted and warned about their association with the quote-unquote finders, a group based in DC, which the finders at that point were kind of like this weird religious sect operation that was kind of hippie and kind of new age and in the middle of that, and it's whether you want to be a part of us, you don't want to be a part of us, we're here for you, but we're open, and it hadn't, there's no closed ends on this situation. It's a group that again thought they were kind of hippie and new age and doing something kind of commune experimental, but from this investigation, from the 2 members they contacted in Tallahassee, the way that it broke down on the questioning, there wasn't a way to charge them or attempt to charge them with something that seemed to be dark and nefarious and disturbed and even child trafficking. They just happened to have these kids with them, and I understand how weird that sounds. But nobody at the time, the kids and nobody else, like put up defenders in a situation where like, oh no, they're doing things and we're able to admit to certain circumstances. They just weren't able to prove why they had to carry these kids. They said that they had to carry these kids because other people who had these kids had put them in their care, and they just happened to be there at the time. Again, this is like basically one 1960s, 70s-ish Karen watching kids play at a public playground and then saying like, oh, that seems weird, I'm going to call the cops on them. So 2 search warrants were prepared by DC's U.S. Attorney's Office on 2 properties owned by the quote-unquote finders, this new age commune group in DC. The searches were executed. Joint investigations were conducted, which led to the identification and interview of the mother's 6 children. So they found out who had bred and were saying that they were legally responsible for these kids that they were found. 2 of their fathers and several other key members. But this starts to get really twisted, mainly with one individual with, this is kind of at the 123, hour 24 mark with Jones and Tim, where they kind of, Tim and Alex Jones kind of make this overarching assumption, which is not proven throughout the rest of the podcast and is also not proven in real life at all whatsoever. The U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. declined prosecution for violation of Title 18, Section 1201, which is kidnapping, and 2251, which is sexual exploitation of children. All of that is online. You could actually read the actual FBI documents. It's Freedom of Information Act, which makes this thing so much crazier because you're having quite a few people, a handful of people. The guy who wrote this book, Jones, his friends in between those. I have insiders, as Jones says throughout the podcast. No one is able to come up with definitive evidence, definitive proof, and actually bring charges to anyone. In the conspiratorial theory realm of this situation, it's basically, you are so loud, mama. Jesus. Don't talk back to me. It's so far out there that you get to a point where the evidence and situation is unprovable. So the only thing you can say is, well, there's people higher up that are hiding this. And that is such an easy cop out and creates such a tangled web, and not able to ever prove that or ever dissect it or ever point to a point man literally on charge of who would be doing that and who would do this. For the CIA, just to say this right now, for the CIA to be accused of ever trafficking children for sex and sexual exploitation and sex crimes is so far off the deep end. I understand people can be like, oh, 9/11's inside job, but for FBI, CIA to do that's so far out of the realm. You can have what was it, Catch a Predator? To Catch a Predator show where you have somebody who looks 17, and then you can put them in a situation in which they're going to kind of like bait and sucker somebody into this, but they're not 17. They're a 22-year-old police officer who looks 17. To go and accuse the CIA and FBI to create this entire operation in which they were going to traffic children or women who are boys who look like children to lure these situations in is very far off the beaten path and definitely provable path. Have there been instances where political agencies, political opponents, political agent, people running for office or congressmen or senators to be caught up in a situation in which they were attempted to be photographed or videotaped or caught with hookers? Totally has happened. Martin Luther King is a great example. The FBI for a long while tried to catch Martin Luther King in affairs in order to prove him wrong and disparage his public image. That doesn't mean they tried to catch him with a 12-year-old and then they're going to capture and take a 12-year-old from wherever they got them from and put them in that situation and allow it to get to a point where they're not going to bust in and break it up. They're gonna videotape it from back and far. The FBI has a very strange and unusual history at points. CIA for sure, same secret agent, secret operative. Pentagon, dark ops, those things exist. But to say that they're going to take like a 5 or 6-year-old and inject them in a situation in which they potentially are molested and or raped, and they're just going to stand back and film that because they need that evidence for later. America is so much more efficient at just killing people than needing to go through this child sex ring route, which this brings into question. So again, I read you the violation title and the section titles for kidnapping and sexual exploitation of children. At the 123 mark, Tim makes this claim that, quote unquote, politicians on Epstein's island were fucking kids. Yet to be proven. He's been arrested once. He's gone to trial once. That was disproved. I understand how bad this can sound. I'm absolutely not defending the fucker in any way, shape, or form. I'm not defending anybody associated with him in any way, shape, or form. But that type of claim to believe that we have that evidence somewhere, somebody's got it, and we know that it exists, is pretty big. And that at some point, someone with authority, FBI, CIA, US, Costa Rica, whatever agencies and powers and police powers you want to put together, were allowing the sexual rape and molestation of children to go through in order to collect evidence on these people. Very, very, very sketchy and very far off. So out of all that we know about the case of Jeffrey's history, we don't have evidence except for a minor factor with the Prince Andrew case. And that has been disgustingly muddled and made and torn apart. The picture exists. We have that. We have her claim. We obviously have his claim and his defection, his interview, and we have similar instances where these, 18-ish, sub 17, 16, 15, and even 14-year-old girls are making claims against these people. but it's not a high political realm. It's actually just against Jeffrey. There's not a lot, if you look at the documentaries, you look at the cases, you look at what's said on the internet or any of that kind of stuff, there's not a lot in which these girls are saying that, like, oh, I slept with these people of power, I was underage, and these things exist. Most of it actually just has to do with Jeff and a little bit with Maxine, and we'll go into some of that later. So other than that, though there were a myriad of people present in this history, allegations are not being made by girls involved other than what has happened to Jeff himself or Cassine herself, and in that kind of grooming phase. There hasn't been people coming out basically stating the damning evidence that so many of us want and need and drool over, which is against these major political and famous figures and celebrities and shit like that. So at the 1 hour 24 mark, which is literally a minute later when all this happened, Joe brings up the picture of Clinton getting a massage from a young lady, and the girl in the picture, who we already know who that is. I'm going to bring up her name in a second. She's already spoken multiple times about this incident and what happened, and never claimed once in any of the interviews or any of the investigations or any of her reportings, had never claimed once that she was abused or misappropriately contacted by Bill Clinton. Jones makes the claim that the girl in the picture has been working, quote unquote, for them since she was 15, which I'm assuming Jones is referring to Jeff and not Bill in that statement. But again, the girl's name is Shantae Davies. She was 22 years old then and was an actual massage therapist. She has given public interviews as to what happened and how innocent it was, and so has Bill. So there's no one saying that that was a dark, disgusting thing that happened. God, I hope you don't ruin this, Nelly. She's so loud. You're quiet, but she is.
Yeah.
See, it's like a fucking whale in the background, man. At the 124 mark, which is like 20 seconds later of this happening, Alex Jones makes the claim that boats pulled up in the middle of the night and would unload little brown kids, which is racist. I understand why you're making that face. It's racist, first of all. Also, I don't know who is watching the island in the middle of the night in the dark. And if somebody was watching the island in the middle of the night in the dark and seeing this offloading of little brown kids on Jeffrey Epstein's island, why nobody would fucking do anything about it? Like, just asking, like
a typical Wednesday. It's fine.
oh, so this happened all the time? It was so normal that people just watch it for shits and giggles? No, I mean, like, this is unprovable. It doesn't fit the plot of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell story. And again, I'm not justifying this. Please, QAnon members, do not come after me over the shit that I'm about to say in the next 20 seconds, because it's not going to go well for you. Let's be honest. So, here's the thing. They're unloading little brown kids. So again, first of all, I don't know who's watching the island in the middle of the night. That Jones knows this, but no one else knows this, and has never been brought up in any documentary or interview ever conducted about Jeffrey Epstein's island. But the trafficking and incomings and outgoings of Jeff's island, I don't know who would have seen that, as Jones seems to insinuate that this happened frequently, but who would have seen this and never ever say or report anything beyond me. I don't know who would have just let that go, but Jones makes this kind of claim that Jeff would be then therefore trafficking children in a sizable operation or something beyond what he is known for in public case and ridicule, and having evidence of which he's picking up girls at the time, practically transporting them under the guise of massage and sexual favors over different lands and waters, which is the child sex trafficking crimes he was accused of. Jones says that in multiple documentaries, quote unquote, I have seen, I think, all the docs on Epstein. To me personally, I don't believe once he's ever claimed to have trafficked multiple people, especially underage kids, in an attempt for being sold. If the overall plot,
Count 1%.
well, so Jeffrey Epstein's total story is that there's a grooming practice in history that occurred. He hired these girls from massage. They were underage, and he led them to do other things. But there's not this kind of plot you can jump to where it's like, oh, I once heard Jeff took 6 children off the street and then flew them to Brazil and sold them to make money. He was a multi-millionaire. Nobody knows how he got his money or why he had his money. So the fact that he needs to sell kids doesn't fit a financial aspect of the story. But there's multiple rumors now that Jeff is, he's murdered. He's suicided. Yeah, he died. He did. But he did this in order to create a system of political and powerful blackmail. So if he could get like a Prince Andrew to fuck a 14-year-old because he groomed her to do that, and then he gets pictures of it, he now has dirt on the crown.
So are you suggesting he got his money by bribing people?
Oh, first of all, I'm not suggesting a damn thing. How dare you? No. So the big thing between Epstein, which a lot of people, and I'm about to go into this, a lot of smart people have claimed, is that he was essentially a kind of agent to create blackmail situations for famous and powerful people. If you look at the people that he actually,
Where's the evidence for that?
the evidence would be on the girls, that he had supposedly groomed to be with these politicians or celebrities. There is random photographic evidence. Like, one thing that a lot of people love to latch onto is that there is he had a painting like that one up there of Bill Clinton in a dress. And it's basically been conjectured to the point that Bill Clinton was wearing a dress and he sat in on that painting while somebody painted that. Or Jeffrey had a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress as blackmail and would use that. So part of this, to go back in the history of it, no, so part of this also has to do with this thing of like Skull and Bones, which if you watch The Good Shepherd with Matthew Damon, amongst one of many celebrities in that film, he gets into Skull and Bones in Yale, and he lays in this coffin, and he has to confess his greatest secret or greatest sin, which is the suicide of his father. And other people believe that eventually becomes, people express homosexuality, they'll express rapes, they will detail molestations of their siblings, and then everybody in the room has that dirt on you. They know that. So if you leave the society, they will fucking burn you. There's no evidence, which is crazily enough. Like in the movie, Matthew Damon's laying in this coffin, and he tells this sadly beautiful story of his dad killing himself kind of in front of him. But no one could ever prove that. In the plot of the thing, no one could ever prove that. So if we're going to go into a room and say that we are, Harvard's Illuminati, and we got 10 guys in the room, drinking beer and doing shots, and we're all ass naked, which that's how dudes do it. And you confess something, I don't have proof of that. I only have Yeah, I only have your word. I only have your rumor that you said. So I could stand there in Yale Skull and Bones, and I'd be like, yeah, one time, um, I was at the zoo and there was a sloth, and he was moving real slow, and you see the sloths, they're kind of like advanced sexual beings, and so I humped him. You don't have proof that I fucked sloth. That's what I'm saying, right? I just made this story up. I hope in like 10 years it's like, oh my god, do you know that Chris guy? Guy fucked a sloth. I hope that becomes a real story. It'd be funny. No one has proof of it. No one knows the sloth. You can't go back and like interview the sloth and be like, did he touch you? Like, I don't know also why it's like a Swedish news channel. Yeah, exactly. God damn it. What's his name? Chris D'Elia? Where did he go? He rapes them. Do you have evidence? That's the hilarious thing. I could literally sit here like 10 years later and be like, my dad, because he was around this time. I could be like, my dad, he shot JFK. Nobody fucking knows that. But if I said that like a Harvard fraternity at the bottom of the basement, like maybe we let the MIT kids in because they know computers and like porn passwords and can get into Jennifer Lawrence's leaked photos. They can hack her cloud or something. I probably should cut this episode off at this point. But like, that's the funny thing is like these dudes were supposed to be able to give up these crazy secrets that you would never be able to prove. You would like fucking Trump. He goes out there and he goes, Ted Cruz's dad shot JFK. He did. For Ted Cruz's sake, I fucking hope he did, because that guy has amounted to fuck nothing. No, honestly, he's on one. I'm senator of Texas, and this election was he is gonna go down as a shit stain in the last 4 years of American government and politics. As if the pandemic wasn't bad enough, if that fucking guy, Trump, literally said your wife's ugly and your dad shot JFK, and 2 years later he's like, this impeachment is a hoax. Yeah, I mean, fuck. So we're moving on at this point, Here, here we go. The overall hilarious thing is this, again, doesn't fit the narrative or the plot of Jeffrey Epstein. Jones, again, says that in multiple documentaries, it's said that he trafficked children. It's never said any episode that I've seen, any documentary I've seen, anything I've read, never creates this huge plot that Jeff was trafficking a substantial amount of underage children. It was more of a grooming process. It was more of a molestation process and rape process from that. That is true. That we have evidence of. If the overall plot of Jeff using the quote unquote underage girls to blackmail famous people, as you and I have been talking about for the last 20 minutes, which is a theory put forth by a lot of folks, and Eric Weinstein covers it really well on his episode with Joe Rogan. He also covers it very well on his own podcast episode for his own podcast, and also covers it very well with Lex Friedman on his podcast episode. This idea of large trafficking operations, and one that, to my knowledge, has never been presented anywhere with evidence, makes technically brand new information that is impossible to fit in the plot of Jeffrey Epstein. Leslie, Nelly, you obviously agree with me.
Yeah. Oh, now she's quiet.
Yeah, right? Fucking whatever, girl. Anyways, in several interviews and documentaries that are brought up, they do interview a former air traffic controller at the island's airport who did claim that he saw young girls that quote unquote couldn't have been older than 16. That is a one-off. No reports of him calling any authority at any time, which is suspicious. Interestingly enough, there were claims of a lone worker on the island even after the FBI raided, and why the FBI allowed anyone else on the island does need an answer. That's true. For the property that he has off the islands and the property that he has in New Mexico, where supposedly he's been seen recently, they need to find someone needs to find out who the fuck is there because that is highly suspicious and highly weird. What's up? So they literally this I don't know who the dude was who caught it, but in New Mexico, Epstein supposedly owns a ranch, and this one dude supposedly caught a picture of Epstein alive today. This would have been like within the last 2 weeks, driving an un an unblacked out pickup truck. Like the windows were clear, see through. He was just, yeah, like, like, oh, take a picture. He's going to allow this dude, like, whatever, 50 yards off to take a picture. And they're like, oh, that's Jeff. He's alive today. And there's this ranch. But people also are going to this ranch and people are tending these properties. So in episode or part 3 or episode 2, whatever the fuck I end up landing, I do want to interview Ian because Ian is in Mexico, New Mexico, in New Mexico, and I asked him to look at that ranch, and he and I talked about potentially getting lost hunting and just raiding the ranch as 007, 008 operatives and seeing who's there because it would be fascinating. And he looked it up, and he's like, man, it's on this long private road, and we would probably get found out by like a drone or a sensor 200, 300 yards before you even get close to the house, which he's significantly chubbier than I am. So I feel like I could get a good sprint in before somebody starts firing back, where he's just going to be easy pittance at that point. But we're contemplating it because it's 2021, and what else are we going to do? It's 2020. Yeah, I like your ankle just popped. That's her. Anyways, so God, I live this every day. Also later on, there's an attempt online. This is still within the 124 mark. I swear to God, there's so much that happened at this point. There's an attempt online to draw a connection between Disney Cruises and Epstein Island, which I think is where Jones is getting this idea. Yeah, this is a real thing. So when Jones is like, they're dropping off little brown kids, I was like,
it's like a Disney cruise.
I literally typed that in, and the first thing that came up was Disney Cruises, and then other people on like Reddit and QAnon and Parler and other shit claiming that like, oh, Disney is involved in this child trafficking scheme. You fucking wish, man. So there's an attempt online to draw a connection between Disney Cruises and Epstein's Island, but the connections hinge on a very muddied water history of pedophilia in Disney's history, which is really hard to sort out and probably not true. For the most part, very, very hard to create that Disney was the person to do this. Walt did this. His main artists and a lot of people in charge, they did, and they have evidence for and have been brought to civil crimes and actual charges. But Walt, like nailing Walt with an actual crime incident is almost impossible. It's probably not possible, to be honest with you. It's not possible. These other people did fuck it for a lot of people. His 12 men, whatever is called, his main artists, they were absolutely sexist. They were absolutely racist. You can find that in the Disney Vaults. Like literally, I've actually seen. I've seen the drawings of crows from Dumbo and racist epitaphs around that. Like, oh, they're stoned, they're stupid, they like jazz music. I ain't never seen no elephant fly. Like that's a real thing. But I've actually seen the first drawing of that, and it's highly racist. So there's this mud water history, including Disney himself and cruise ship incidences, but no direct connections could be made. Richard Cook, a former Disney chairman, supposedly took trips on the quote-unquote Lolita Express, which is Jeffrey the nickname for Jeffrey Epstein's island and transportation. Snopes.com, when I pulled an article related to the event, brought that up. Mostly all of this is conjecture and seems to come from Amy Robach's quote unquote hot mic moment, where she complains about an Epstein story she did 3 years ago that was pulled from being aired. This video and videos are online and can be easily found. Shut the I hope she becomes more popular than me, and then the podcast just goes to like pug snoring. Like, oh, have you had a long, stressful day? Listen to pug snoring. So, because of the connection between ABC and Disney, of which Disney is a parent company of, no evidence conclusion was established that Disney pulled the segment to hide Epstein case. There's nothing there. You can't find anything, and if they did pull it, they did a fantastic job of it. The Disney cruises do travel to St. John Island, which is different than Little St. James Island, the latter being owned and operated by Epstein or affiliates. Alex says he's done interviews and investigations, but as far as I know, Jones has never been sought by investigators or prosecutors. If Jones was sought by an actual legal or professional officials investigating these cases, I am sure, absolutely sure, he would bring this up constantly and post it and brag about it. But it ain't never happened. So at the 1:26 hour, 26-minute mark, John DeCamp, William Kobe, Franklin Child, Pedo Ring. John DeCamp, a real Vietnam veteran, war hero, or was actually served in the Vietnam War, a Nebraska senator, initially operated Operation Baby Lift, which evacuated 2,800 Vietnamese children, later assigned to be aided and cared for by CIA Director William Kobe. In 1992, did write a mass market paperback book titled The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder. In part of state and federal grand jury cases that ultimately concluded the allegations were unfounded and the ring was quote-unquote a carefully crafted hoax. William Kobe's death is weird. In the Joe Rogan podcast, Tim says he died on a canoe, but his dinner was waiting for him. On April 27, 1996, Colby set out from his weekend home in Rock Point, Maryland, on a solo canoe trip. His canoe was found the following day on a sandbar in the Wickacomic River, a tributary of the Potomac, approximately a 1/4 mile from his home. On May 6th, Colby's body was found. So April 27th, they found the canoe. On May 6th, a substantial amount of time later, his body was found on a marshy riverbank lying face down, not far from when his canoe was found, interestingly enough. But after an autopsy, Maryland's chief medical examiner, John E. Smilik, ruled his death to be a quote-unquote accidental. Smalik's report noted that Colby was predisposed to having a heart attack or stroke due to severe calcified atherosclerosis. Jesus Christ. Yeah. And I'm a doctor. Jesus Christ. I can't do it. Say it.
What?
Calcified. Atherosclerosis. God, it's so easy once you do it. Ball.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Atherosclerosis. Nope. No, that's literally it. And that Colby likely suffered a quote-unquote complication of this atherosclerosis, which precipitated him into the cold water and debilitated a state that he succumbed to the effects of hypothermia and drowned. Mazel tov. I don't think it's appropriate either. So, nothing. Colby's death triggered conspiracy theories. God, Jesus. Conspiracy theories that his death was due to foul play. In his 2011 documentary, The Man Nobody Knew. I don't know how you had a documentary when he was already dead. That is fascinating.
And if nobody knew him,
Yeah, nobody knew him. Who paid for this? Who found this out?
fucking Epstein.
I think Alex Jones killed him, flipped the canoe, ate the body. Makes sense. No, it makes sense, right?
It seems a little excessive.
And then was like, I'm gonna make a documentary about atherosclerosis.
I mean, it
Ath-
does
ather-
fit, but I feel like it's excessive.
I feel like it's all bullshit, to be honest with you. So he ruled accidental, calcified. Yeah. So it triggered multiple conspiracy theories that his death was due to foul play. In his documentary, The Man Nobody Knew, Colby's son Carl, fucking Carl, suggests that his father suffered from guilt due to his actions in the CIA and committed suicide, which is way different than if you listen to part one.
Seems like he has daddy issues.
Amongst other things. I feel like his daddy has daddy issues. Carl's stepmother and siblings, we got to bring them into it, as well as Colby's biographer, Randall Woods. Fake name. Yeah, Mr. Woods. Criticized Carl's portrayal of William Colby and rejected the allegation that the former CIA director killed himself, citing his death as being inconsistent with his character. All right, we hear that often. My dad would never kill himself. I think only Hunter S. Thompson's son would ever say that. Like, out of so many dudes that I know that have actually killed themselves in history, especially in like literary history, their sons have been like, yeah, no, he did that. Like Juan's the only one to admit to that. Any other dude that dies, they're like, my dad will kill himself. So does that lead?
Like typical of suicide, like you don't know until it's done. Like no, like majority of the time, you don't see it coming. Is what I'm saying. There's more cases in where your like close circle of friends are like not aware of the extent of the depression.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but it makes no sense. No, yeah, like who's gonna admit? Who's gonna admit as a son, even if you have a famous dad, who's gonna admit that you fucking off themselves?
It depends who the PR.
It's always murder. It was CIA. It was operatives.
Who's the PR team?
Kellyanne Conway.
Oh fuck that.
Kellyanne Conway. Yeah.
Jeez.
Is this? Am I literally part 2 in this? I'm gonna use the word cunt because I'll fucking use it. I'll fucking use it. Well, when the cunt fits.
Oh, how long is this?
47 minutes in. It feels like 2 hours, but we're here, so we're gonna do this. This is gonna be multiple part episode, especially because I keep grabbing the mouse and it's not even fucking connected. So, anyways, this creates this really crazy case of what's called the Franklin Child Pedo Ring. And again, there's a documentary about it. What I thought was a very good documentary. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Which one?
Who Took Johnny? The first milk carton kid. And the dude's like, oh, remember we went into the basement and there was a room? They're like, oh shit, there was a room under the basement.
Yeah, it was alright.
Like, that's proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the shit gets really weird. I mean, definitely like look at it, watch the documentary, come back in the comment section later or text me privately. A lot of you guys are doing it at night, which is very strange. But there's a classic documentary, Who Took Johnny? I think it's on Amazon. I think you find probably on Amazon. Jeff Bezos thing. Which is the actual interviews with the players I mentioned above and gives a fascinating insight into the story and spiderweb and history. But I walked away from that documentary with essentially having to say that there's nothing there. I mean, that dude got like $1 million, but he's weird as fuck. And this guy, like, eventually, I think I cut this. At some point, this dude in this documentary, and I'm blanking on his name as of right now, he specifically names Hunter S. Thompson as a person who had raped and murdered somebody in front of him. The problem with this story that this dude tells is that he's very specific on details that you would never want to say or admit in public. Cannibalization of children. That he did. He did this. He was put in a situation with these two dudes, and they had guns or knives, and they killed a kid in front of him, and they literally, like, you have to eat part of his body. I'm not going to go in detail. You can look the shit up yourself. And he does it. And that is so far off to admit, but he won't use common terms for sexual organs. Like, he won't say balls, he'll say testicles. Like, it gets specific.
I don't feel like that's weird.
50 minutes into it, that's the comment I wanted you to give was, yeah, it's common. No, it's not. This dude's like, I ate the sexual organs of another child, but I ate his testicles versus like I ate his balls. Like, but prior to that, he's only making like non-technical, physical, medical terms associated with this. He'd be like, I fucked the kid. Not that I had sex with the kid. I had sexual intercourse with the kid. I penetrated the kid. I fucked the kid, and then I ate his testicle. Like, that kind of shit. That's not. You saw him in the documentary. No, that guy wasn't cohesive.
Like, it's common.
That guy didn't have a cohesive story.
It's common verbiage, but it's not like common sexually.
But so you and I come to this conclusion. Well, you know, again, it's between the hour 32 mark and hour 26 mark of the Joe Rogan podcast. This dude, is going through all this crazy shit. He can't identify a single fucking person involved. But he goes to Vegas. He knows that he goes to Vegas and he sees Hunter S. Thompson. Who said his name out loud? Who's raping and murdering children? And they're like, hey, get the videotape. Also, Hunter S. Thompson, please report to the front of the child rape plot. Like, that's so weird. Now, Hunter later on, to be honest with you, because I researched shit out of this, because Hunter Thompson is one of my favorite authors and writers and influences. But he's accused of particular crimes and situations, not crimes. He's accused of situations and circumstances. His one of his main secretaries or assistants said that Hunter wanted her to watch a snuff film and she wouldn't, so he kicked her out of the house for 2 weeks. Now, honestly, that sounds like something Hunter would do. Does that mean that Hunter was part of the directorial and production crew and starred in and actually murdered a child? Has he said other things of satanic worship and rape and bestiality? Yes. Hell's Angels ends with him in this disgustingly open, while he's supposedly just lit on acid, instance of which a girl is getting gangbanged. And he's horrified. And then he hears later on, I don't think he actually sees it ever, but he hears later on that they had sex with the dog for money. So bestiality. And so he's talked about these things, of course, like Satan. Like Hunter is literally responsible basically for adrenochrome. So in the QAnon theory, the fact that there's Democrats and Hollywood elites who capture these children and they get them in these off positions, and they beat them and rape them and cut them and hurt them in these ways in which they produce adrenochrome, this sexual drug that they get high off of. Hillary Clinton gets high. So literally, Hillary Clinton's assistant,
Okay.
Anthony Weiner's wife,
Okay.
what's her name?
Yeah. Mrs. Wiener.
Mrs. Wiener. Supposedly, like they have video of her eating a child. That's what QAnon bases their whole shit off of. That's why he got arrested. That's why got him kicked out. They have video of, oh god damn it. It's like a tuna Makata or something. What is it? Akuna Matata. It means no worries, man.
Does it?
Man, yeah. So yeah, so like Hunter literally creates this hilarious moment in this very important scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas of this thing adrenochrome, which is one of my favorite moments and also my favorite moments for Drug Life, because the lawyer character, which in the movie Benicio del Toro playing Dr. Gonzo, is he tells him this little thing, this little jar, you know. He's like, yeah, man, it's adrenochrome. He's like, we get that out of the live adrenal gland of a dying human. And Johnny Depp's character is going like, la, 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 la. He's doing like, he's like, yeah, you'd like 2 drops under the tongue, but Hunter's character,
Your arm is like.
I understand it. We're right here, dude. Hunter's character and Johnny Depp's character are just like milking this thing. And then Johnny Depp's character, Hunter's character, starts seeing way too much crazy shit. It starts going rad. One of my favorite ever, like if you needed a shaman in your life, is Benicio del Toro in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas going, you took too much, man. You took too much. And then like later on he wakes up in a lizard tail and there's like the whole floor's flooded and it's all chaos. And people today are like, oh my God, we steal adrenochrome for these children. But meanwhile, that's the second drug ever. Hunter basically just fucking fabricated out of his mind. But somehow people believe in this shit. So, long story short, at the 1 hour and 32 minute mark, and in all honesty, because I was coming back to this a month later and I skipped ahead, and what in the actual fuck is the Democratic Party, the Chinese Communist government, Hunter Biden, Dianne Feinstein, and shit just happened. I literally ended part 1, and that's basically where I pick up part 2, and I can't make heads or tails of this shit. Right after this keyword, oral jack off of people, important terms, Jones downgrades Trump publicly, wishing Ghislaine Maxwell well. Remember that? He's getting interviewed, the coronavirus task force, and they're like, what do you have to say to Ghislaine Maxwell? And he's like, I wish her well. I wish her well. And Jones is like, he's just kidding. Which I would, you know, as a fan, as a Trump supporter, which you are, and you fat fuck. Tell me another joke that he's ever said in his entire life.
Who?
Trump. Arrest my case. And so,
He's a funny guy, though.
look, I'm sure we all have seen the footage, that footage in particular, and for as many people as I can think, who think it's the Clintons, which is like impossible or wasn't suicide, for Jeffrey Epstein. I want to lay out these key factors as a case, which Dr. Grande does as well. So at least he and I are on the same page. 1, at the time of Epstein's death, Trump is the president. That's huge. Clinton could have killed him all 8 years he was president. Trump's been president 4 years and will only be president 4 years. And if you think otherwise, you can fuck off this channel, because you don't believe in reality. And so that's enough time. Clinton had enough time throughout the time. Post-presidency, you could have killed this dude. It'd been fine. 2, we know Trump has or had direct ties to Epstein, were friends, or are literally on video talking over women and saying aggressively inappropriate things. 3, Ivanka and Dad are photographed with Epstein and Trump, as always. And since her birth, Trump said highly inappropriate things about his daughter and eventually wanted her to be the first lady. Did you know that? That when he won the...
He's fucking dumb, dude.
Don't say that.
Of course he was like,
we will be suicide. And also, why are you making fun of an Arkansas accent?
Who?
I feel like that was your best accent. Do it in British. Come on, daughter be the first lady. Do it.
May my daughter be the first lady.
Yeah, it's so many vowels. All right, and so 4. In comparison to evidence, we have more that Trump and Epstein are closer versus Jeff and Bill being close. I'm sure some of you are screaming about the flight log. That really isn't evidence, and it's not evidence in the sense that of any actual physical in-person reaction or encounter of someone accusing Bill of being inappropriate with minors has actually taken place. It's not there. And right about now, I'm sure some of you are saying, because the Clintons killed people. And look, if you look up any situation in which the Clintons are even remotely conspiratorially being considered as murderers or assassins, it's virtually fucking possible. You gotta let that go. There's nothing there. Literally. The dude literally couldn't get a blowjob without getting caught. If you stack that against the massive fucking evidence against the rumor online, it is very, very hard to see him being successful as a murder assassin endeavors. Jesus. Stop. William Barr is in charge of the DOJ during Epstein's murder-suicide and definitely has done Trump's bidding since taking the position and was put in charge of the investigation. Weird. And what happened? Literally nothing. Trump lives literally down the street from Jeffrey Epstein for years. Trump later hires the same DA, Acosta, onto his team as a Secretary of Labor, and also uses another person who has actually had eyewitness evidence proposed against him, which was Trump's impeachment defense lawyer, one of them, Alan Dershowitz. So Bill has like a couple pictures and this video, this photograph of him getting massaged, and no one ever saying he did inappropriate things. But again, Jeff and Trump have literal years and a pretty significant amount of evidence. Again, Dr. Todd Grande, his YouTube channel, does a great breakdown of Epstein, and I highly recommend it. It will give you similar insight, but ultimately there is way more evidence connecting Trump and Jeff than Bill and Jeff as far as nefarious, crazy shit goes. This literally brings us back to the 133 mark, and Jones makes the claim that his actual superpower is that, quote unquote, he always tries to give the accurate thing, but he's only 97% right. Sure. If you think so. Also at this point, I just want to point out the fact that Tim and Jones get along like gangbusters, and that's very concerning. I feel like Tim's leading Jones on, and Jones like all for it because he needs that of the narcissism that he has, and it's problematic. At the 136 mark, 1 hour 36, the Young Turks are the Illuminati, and they're also the Hitler Youth. I'm just gonna let that go. At the 138 mark, the strange oral comparison is actually pulled from a scene in the Bible over the Tower of Babel, which I use as an example personally as why people cannot get along with each other in a harmonious, accepting way that God wants us to. It makes sense. You have to read that chapter. That's on you. On the 1 hour and 41 minute mark, Jones couldn't have been more wrong with his election prediction, and we can easily apply and extrapolate that to everything else he has ever said. Honestly, he literally, so like at this point in the podcast, because the election hasn't happened, he's like, the Democrats are going to steal the election by protesting the votes. They're going to go to court over the votes, and they're going to try to win it that way.
Who's trying to win votes at court?
Everyone else but Trump, because he didn't win anything in court. You should have seen her hand gesture. And also I said I wouldn't do this, and I agree that I wouldn't get opinionated, But let me just chime in here for a second, for a moment, for just a brief instant. No one, and I can break down the basis of their arguments, wants to silence Jones. Gets into after this point, Joe and Jones in particular go over this thing of free speech and censorship and all this kind of shit. No one wants to silence Jones for what he says or doesn't say. They want to silence Jones because he literally harasses people. If you haven't seen that or you're not aware of that, you need to spend more time on the internet. It's very easy to find. It would be one thing for him to just use his platform and say literally whatever the fuck he wants. But when he's made all of these call to action type statements, which he has, that's where the fucking line gets crossed. Sit there on the etherweb and say Sandy Hook is bullshit, but don't go high on meth and start saying we need to bring these people to justice and hold them accountable and find out their lies and manipulations are. That's when the line gets crossed between free speech and basically harassment and or call to arms or violent speech. Free speech is your protected speech from the government. It doesn't mean as a personal platform of YouTube or Twitter or Facebook that you can say whatever the fuck they want. Twitter owns their platform. Facebook owns their platform. YouTube owns their platform. Google owns their platform. Yahoo owns their platform. I could go on. They get to be in control over what is said and what is not said, which people label as censorship. Your free speech is the government impeding on the things that you are able to not say, especially against the government. It doesn't mean you can get on YouTube and do a bunch of meth and be like, we need to find these people to be self-evident and truthful, and it's the Sandy Hook was a lie, and it was an inner operation, and it was dark web, and the kid never existed, and it was FBI, they killed people, and we need to go find families and flush them out. You can't do that. Ever. Anywhere. It's not allowed. It wouldn't be allowed if you were outside yelling that shit outside of a police station. At multiple times, especially if you're trying to, you can't stand up in a movie theater. Shit. You can't stand up in a movie theater and yell fire because it's not fucking free speech. You may think that it's free speech. I have the freedom to say fire because I'm from Texas. Shout out to Texas. But if it endangers the livelihood and existence of others, you can't fucking do it. That's why you can't go on an airplane and say bomb. That's where the Jones line in the sand falls. So when you try to take free speech and turn it into justification for call for violent action, that's when people get pissed. That's when they get upset. That's when they get concerned. No one gives a gay frog's ass. He says 99% of the things that Jones says. But when he manipulates that in a way as to get others who are more disturbed and deranged than he is to potentially start committing violent actions, which they do even by threat, that's when you have to kick the little bugger off the soapbox and put him on timeout. That is, like, how could you deny that to be true? How could you say that that is a bad move? If this dude is literally calling for the blood of other people on a public, privately owned platform like YouTube or Facebook or whatever, though they publicly trade, they're still privately owned. How can you agree with that? Well, he could say what he wants. No, not if it's going to fucking endanger other people, like fire in a movie theater or like a bomb on an airplane. Look, by this point in the episode and on this day, Joe moved to Texas, and at all the moments Joe decided to turn around and point the finger at California or government or say what he wanted to on how he felt he was being mismanaged or bastardized or molested, he never once incites a call to action. kudos to him. That even could result in violence. Jones, on the other hand, is literally known for showing up with a bullhorn, yelling some crazy ass chants, trying to push people to get physical in one way or another. And that's the fucking difference. And the fact that I am 35 and no one at midnight in December 19th, and I have to explain that to people is fucking painfully shocking. The 1 hour and 41 mark, Jones says Trump's gonna win big. How'd that turn out?
He won.
So won.
Everybody knows it.
At the 1 hour and 42 mark, big tech knows psychological algorithms. China is killing Muslims and Christians, and I'm not gonna finish this because what the fuck are you and I gonna do with this as people? I'm gonna go 2 more points after this because it was getting out of hand for me already, but I'll finish it later on. At the 145 mark, Jones is basically saying the Democrats are going to do one thing when actually the Republicans ended up doing what he said they were going to do. At this point, Jones is more drunk than drunk. Or Jones. He's also more drunk than Jones. At the 146 mark, Joe left because of looting. That's why Joe Rogan said he left California. It was because of riots. He was scared. He thought that, oh, they're letting... Well, we found fucking episode title of the show. What a fucking pussy. Yeah, Joe Rogan, MMA, UFC.
What a fucking piece of shit.
He's done Taekwondo since he was 6. He's literally beaten up UFC fighters.
That has nothing to do with
Jiu-jitsu on it.
Not even like,
Yeah, no, he goes,
the
hey,
fucking Rodney King riots were worse.
oh, they were. But because Joe Rogan's like, oh my God, they sacked the target. What's next?
Oh no.
Me?
Don't take my Walmart.
Is that a Schitt's Creek reference? Is it really? All right. Schitt's Creek fan. I hope you guys chime in for that, Mark. I was shocked. I thought he left because of taxes. He gets $100 million contract. If he's like, yeah, I left because of fucking taxes. Fuck California. Going to Texas because they're not going to tax me. Makes fucking sense. I would never think Joe Rogan's going to sit there and be, I thought it was in danger. Like fucking ever. I don't know a situation that I could put Joe Rogan in where I'm like, you scared, bitch? And he's like, yes. Yes, a couple black kids are beating up a Target.
And he's worried about fucking riots that are happening like miles and miles away from his house. What a fucking dumb fuck. Goodbye, girl, bye.
I hope your company gives you permission to be on this podcast. No, you're right. I didn't think of that. And that's where we're going to fucking leave it.
How much did he make from his fucking YouTube channel? Like,
$100 million.
Fuck off.
$100 million.
Fuck off.
But he was scared,
He
Leslie.
didn't hire the police
He was scared for his life.
riots.
You're right. He knows Navy SEALs. He literally knows multiple Navy SEALs that would surround his compound and defend him to the death, probably. Or wear Alex Jones as a bulletproof vest and or crotch protector.
New panties, 'cause fuck, man.
Do you think On It would come out with thongs? See, the first...
He's not man enough to wear thongs. let's call it right there.
The first part of this...
Fucking, I want to call him a guy.
This was supposed to be a fact check, but now I think it's gone really deep. Oh, Mom, are you up? You fat, fucking loud ass snoring, beautiful angel. Come here. Let them see you. Let them see you. Come here. Mama, come here.
No, Lucas, come here. No.
No, get over here. I gotta get her. I have to get her. Hang on, folks.
Please hold.
This is going on. Stay where you are.
You want to go see how
I know you guys heard this noise for quite a bit. I'm gonna try to put this back on. This is Mama. This is the big bug. This is the one that makes all the noises. Yep. There she is. This is also my baby. If there was anyone in this room that I would die for, it's this bitch. So anyways, hope you guys have fun. Hope your ankle has fun. Say bye, mama. We're going to cut this off now. I have to do a part 3 because I can't fucking take this anymore.
Bye.
Yes. Bye. Bye, girl. Bye, girl. All right. 3, 2, 1. What are you?